Is history repeating itself? Abena was only 9 years old when soldiers came knocking on her family's door back in Lagos, Nigeria. Her parents, both Ghanaian, had lived there for over a decade. Overnight, they were told to leave. No court hearing, no appeal judgment, just go. Abena remembers her mother stuffing clothes into a cheap woven bag as neighbors wept. She remembered the long walk to the border, the hunger, the tears, and the humiliation. The bag she carried, like millions of others, became a symbol of exile. The Ghana must go back. Abena's story is not unique. Across Africa, from Accra to Johannesburg, from Abidjan to Lagos, countless lives have been torn apart by expulsion and xenophobia. And today, as Ghana faces fresh unrest, the same ghosts of division are rising again. To understand the root of this division amongst Africa, we must first look back at Africa before the arrivals of the Europeans and before the borders were drawn. Imagine this, it is the early 80s. You arrive in a small African village. You walk up to one of the villagers and ask, "What country is this?" The villager looks at you, confused, because the idea of a country does not exist here. What they know is their village, perhaps a few neighboring towns, and the kingdom or empire to which they belong. Africa was a land of kingdoms, empires, and dynasty. The Ashanti dynasty in present-day Ghana, the Benin Kingdom, and the Oyo Empire in what is now known as Nigeria, and many others. This was Africa before European intervention. But then came the Europeans with maps. They gathered in Berlin in 1884. In just few months, they carved Africa into colonies and territories. Borders were drawn without thought for language, culture, or tribe. Whole people split apart, rival groups forced together. No African voice was heard, no African choice was given. Fast forward nearly a century, the winds of independence swept across the continent. Nations were born, flags rise high in the air, and a new chapter begins. Africans now free from colonial masters begin to move. Crossing these artificial borders, they travel in search of work, education, and opportunity. For the first time in generations, Africans begin to reconnect with each other. Slowly, something dangerous begins to grow. Resentment, suspicious, and hostility. Locals looking at fellow Africans saying, "You don't belong here, go back to your country." The very lines drawn by outsiders have now become lines drawn in our mind, causing division between Africans. This is the legacy of borders not chosen, a wound first carved by Europeans but kept alive by Africans. In 1969, Ghanaian's government, under the Alien Compliance Order, expelled over 150,000 Nigerians and West Africans. Families who had lived there for decades lost everything. In 1983 and 1985, Nigeria responded in kind. Over 2 million Ghanaians were forced to return home in humiliation. In Africa, the policy of evil rights branded northern immigrants as outsiders, sparking violence against Burkinabe and Malian workers in the 2000s. In South Africa, since 2008, waves of xenophobic attacks have killed hundreds of Zimbabweans and Nigerians. One Nigerian shoekeeper recalled, "I came here to work, but they burned my shop and called me a foreigner. Where else can I go?" From West Africa to the South, the pattern repeats. Economic hardship fuels anger, and immigrants become the scapegoats. Today, Ghana, once a beacon of stability, is boiling with unrest. In Accra and Kumasi, protesters demand Nigeria must go. Placards accuse immigrants of crime, ritual killing, and economic domination. Why do African nations keep turning against each other? The answer lies in three recurring truths. Firstly, economic fragility. When jobs vanish, inflation rises, blaming migrants is easier than fixing the broken system. Secondly, weak regional integration. The new African Continental Free Trade Area promised free movement, but at borders, suspicion still overrides solidarity. Thirdly, political opportunism. Leaders find it easy to win support by pointing fingers at outsiders. But let's not forget, short term gains leave long term scars. The cycle is square but familiar. But Africa is not doomed to continue in this division among itself. There is a way out. Firstly, let's invest in people. A strong economy creates jobs for everyone, local and foreign. Secondly, let's reinforce regional agreements. Bodies like ECOWAS and the EU must go beyond talk. They should protect the rights of Africans to live and work across borders. Thirdly, let's educate against fear. Media and schools must tell stories of cooperation and not just conflict. Lastly but not the least, let's build a pan-African identity. Instead of seeing each other as Ghanaians, Nigerians or Zimbabweans, we must see ourselves as Africans. And we can all agree that the African Continental Free Trade Area is a chance to make this real. If goods can move freely, maybe people and ideas can too. Abenasi remembers the long walk to Ghana in 1983. She still remembers the humiliation of being told she did not belong. Today, others are living through the same fear of exclusion and violence. But history does not have to repeat itself. The choice is ours. Do we keep dividing ourselves, blaming each other, and expelling our brothers and sisters? Or do we finally write a new story of solidarity, cooperation, and unity across Africa? Because if history is trying to repeat itself, then maybe it is time for Africa to finally say no more.